Hi friends! With the premiere of Season 12 approaching, and with it also 10 or more new lip-syncs, of which some could go down in Drag Race history as one of the best ones, today I wanted us to look back at some of the previous season's lip-syncs. What we'll be focusing on are the lip-syncs where the results may not have had much to do with how the queens actually performed during them. While compiling the list of these lip-syncs, I looked at two types of outcome. One, lip-syncs, or rather the outcome of which was purely storyline based, and two, lip-syncs, or rather the outcome of which was purely performance into competition based. This includes those instances where it would be a queen's third time lip-syncing, so she was more or less automatically eliminated. 3 strikes and you're out kind of a rule. There is also a hybrid type, so technically there are 3 types of these. Let's go over each type and comment on the lip-syncs that would fit each of them, and possibly point out some exceptions. This isn't to say that how the queens did in these lip-syncs did not matter, but rather that it was very minimal, almost negligible. Excuse the poor quality of the screenshots that I'm about to use. I wanted to make this with the actual clips from the lip-syncs, but I don't want to earn no money from this video. So first, the storyline outcome type. The first lip-sync I put into this type is the one between Jade and Rebecca Glasscock from way back in Season 1. We have already established that Drag Race is a reality show, alongside it being a competition show, of course. And so they need to have certain storylines, certain tropes, types of characters, etc. in order to sell the show to an audience. Since Season 1 by that point had already lost its villain in Akasha, they needed another one. Between Jade and Rebecca, Rebecca in that episode had been shown as not that well liked by some of the girls, Jade in particular, and I believe the show wanted to push her as the villain of the season, which is why she ended up being saved. It helps that she was very easy on the eyes too, but my crush on Rebecca out of drag is not what we're here to talk about. Next lip-sync is the one between Venus and Shangela. Similarly to the previous lip-sync of Rebecca and Jade's, this lip-sync was very messy, borderline violent, and the performances weren't that stellar that you can say definitely that one queen won over the other. I believe that Shangela was kept because, well, it would have been a little embarrassing had she gone home in the first episode yet again, but also they brought her back for Season 3 to show her growth, to have her redemption, which is why her being saved here was pretty obvious. Alyssa and Coco's lip-sync from Season 5 I would put here as well. Now, in this lip-sync, both queens did great. I would say that Coco was better than Alyssa, but even if they were incredibly close, the win would have gone to Coco just because, again, redemption. Coco needed to have that final win over Alyssa because of their Miss Gay USA situation. It was the final chapter of their storyline, but also of Coco's storyline on Drag Race. Laganja and Jocelyn's lip-sync from the next season is here as well. Like with the previous lip-sync, both of these girls did well. Jocelyn, in my opinion, just a tad bit better, but I don't think that's why she won the lip-sync. Laganja, by that point, was completely shook up by the competition, not once, but twice walked out of the shooting of Untucked and clearly was not doing well. So I think the producers just wanted her out for both her own, but also their own sake. Trixie versus Pearl, insert crowd booing here, is up next. So I think we can all agree that this lip-sync was not good, and that the best outcome for it is a double sachet. Many people believe that Trixie did better than Pearl, and that because of Pearl's low energy and just no fucks giving attitude about the competition, Trixie should have stayed. But my dudes, that's exactly why Pearl was kept. They had a story with her that we haven't really seen on the show by that point. Somebody with a lot of potential who just couldn't be arsed and who had to be pushed to come out of her shell. Is that the fairest thing ever? No, but neither is life, so... On Season 10, literally any lip-sync result Eureka was in was made to favor her, and we're not gonna talk about this anymore. Season 11 has a fair amount of lip-syncs on this list. The first one is, of course, everyone's favorite lip-sync between Raja O'Hara and Scarlet Envy. Regardless of how Scarlet did, and who you think did better, keeping Raja made much more sense than keeping Scarlet. Scarlet had that pearl aura about her, but she actually cared about the competition and tried and gave it her all. So other than that mini conflict she had with the other girls at the very beginning of the season, the producers probably didn't think there'd be much of anything else from her. Similarly to Eureka on season 10, any lip sync with Vanessa on season 11 was judged to favor Vanessa, except, of course, the final one against Brooke. We all know why, we're not gonna talk about it. And lastly, and the one that still hurts, the Nina West versus Silky Nutmeg Ganache lip sync. The most logical outcome of that horrendous lip sync was a double sachet. The next one, but that's so far down the list of logical outcomes, is Nina staying, because she did better than Silky because, well, she knew the words and kinda performed the song. But the producers chose the 591st most logical outcome to this lip sync, which is Silky staying. Why? Well, because she was favored throughout the entirety of the season. They were pushing her towards the crown to possibly score some points with the SJWs and to have someone butt heads with Evie. Furthermore, all of the lip syncs I picked from the All-Star seasons fit into this category. These are those lip syncs, so let's do a speed round. Needing someone to go home first and keeping Chad. Keeping Rujubi, even when they went up against each other. Detox picked Katya's lipstick, while Alyssa picked Ginger's, and as we know, Ru knows which queen picked which lipstick, and all of her reactions are fake. Watch the video that just popped up in the card in the upper right hand corner of your screen if you want a more in-depth look into that situation. Dela wrote her own name on the lipstick and then self-eliminated herself. Latrice was coming back no matter what, because she's Latrice, and Ru loves favoring older queens. Now let's move on to the second category before we go into the hybrid category. So this category has to do with the actual performance of the queens in the competition, as in, if a queen is doing really well, the result of the lip sync will usually be in her favor, if she puts up at least a bit of a fight. Or, if a queen is doing poorly and is usually her third time in the bottom two, she's probably going home. This also means that if a returning queen is in the bottom two, she's definitely gonna be eliminated again, which includes the Raja vs Carmen, Latrice vs Kenya, Ginger vs Trixie, and Chi Chi vs Naisha lip syncs. I would also include the Cynthia vs Peppermint lip sync from season 10, given that Cynthia is a returning queen, but a returning queen to another season, and her performance in season 10 was pretty lackluster. Next up are the lip syncs where it's somebody's third time in the bottom two, and there are no shenanigans like Tatiana not knowing the words. So that person is eliminated almost by default, no matter how they do. Manila vs Delta and Shangela vs Alexis are good examples of this, with all four queens doing very well individually in the lip sync, but of course it makes more sense to save Manila and Alexis respectively due to their track records up to that point. Similarly to that, we have the Willem vs Jiggly lip sync from season 4, which was very middle of the road, and in my opinion, yeah, Willem did better, but regardless of that, Jiggly just could not hang with the other queens anymore. Both lip syncs between Ben de la Creme and Darian Lake are also here. The first one is here because Ru saved Dela because of her track record, which prior to that episode was the best in show, whereas the second lip sync is here because, well, Dela lost the lip sync for the second time and furthermore had a somewhat underwhelming performance after being saved for the first time, so now there was no saving her again. I do think that had that been Dela's first time in the bottom two, Darian would have gone home. Next up are two lip syncs from season 7, with Jaden vs Candy and Jaden vs Ginger. The first one could have easily been a double shantay had it not been Candy's third time in the bottom two, and Jaden and Candy really being non-factors in the season as a whole, whereas the second one was Jaden's third bottom two placement in a row. And lastly, I included the Nina vs Shay lip sync because had Nina not just given up, but also had it not been her third time in the bottom two, which is the reason why she gave up, she would have killed Shay in the Cool for the Summer lip sync. Let's get into the hybrid category. The murky category. So the ones that were influenced by the storyline, but also by the performance in the competition by the queen, or both queens in the lip sync. For example, the first lip sync I put here is the Chanel vs Akasha lip sync. Why? Well, this was Akasha's third lip sync in a row, so more or less her elimination is inevitable, no matter how well she did in this lip sync as well as her first two. On the other hand, storyline-wise, Chanel was shown from the beginning of that season as a very professional, mildly stuck-up queen that needed to be knocked off her high horse. Yeah, I'm mixing idioms here. So the moment that she bounced up and had her headpiece fall off at the right moment is when she won that lip sync, which is when she essentially showed her weakness. The Latrice versus Chad lip sync from season 4 on one hand has Latrice with her third time in the bottom 2, and just in general being middle of the road throughout most of the competition, but also it has Chad needing to be shown as having a weakness, and what other way to do that but to put her in the bottom 2 right before the finale. Next up is the Detox versus Coco lip sync. Nothing too special to say here. This was Coco's fourth time in the bottom 2, so performance in the competition, and it was the part of the season's story that needed to remove her from the competition in order for us to have a Jinkx versus Alaska Talks in the top 4. Speaking of, Jinkx versus Detox is another lip sync of this sort. This was Detox's third time in the bottom 2, her second in a row at that, so by that point of view, she's the obvious out. On the other hand, Detox's elimination was almost pre-planned and was the first step to Jinkx ultimately beating her bullies, the Alaska Talks, on season 5. What do I mean by Detox's elimination being pre-planned? Well, allegedly, the lip-sync song for the top 4 episode on season 5 was to be an En Vogue song, I don't know exactly which one, which was right up Detox's alley, so they changed it up to a song that you could perform in a very campy way in order to ensure that Jinkx would make it into the top 3 and ultimately win. The next two lip syncs are very similar, so I'll talk about them together. The two lip syncs Adore was in on her season had her go up against Trinity and Jocelyn, two queens who didn't really leave much of an impressive mark on the competition on season 6. Moreover, the fact that it was Adore who they were up against almost by default meant that they were going home. What with Paula Abdul, someone Adore had worked with on American Idol, being a guest judge during the first lip sync in question, and of course the song being one of her songs, while on the other hand, by the time the Jocelyn versus Adore lip sync came around, the producers knew that they had something great with Adore that would lure in audiences, especially the younger demographic, so they were keeping her as safe as possible. Season 8's lip sync between Bob and Derek served to put an end to a couple of storylines. The one between Bob and Derek, obviously. Another between Derek and Naomi. Derek's sort of self-discovery in drag outside of Britney Spears' impersonator gig story. And similarly to Chad's time in the bottom 2 on season 4, Bob's storyline of being pretty good at almost everything thrown at her. Derek's more or less constant bottom 3 placement throughout the season and her being in the bottom 2 for the second time this season more or less sealed the deal on the outcome of the lip sync before it had even begun. Alexis versus Peppermint is one of the standout lip syncs of season 9. I would even say that it's the best lip sync of that season, given that it's really the only one where both queens actually did pretty well. Funny thing is, neither Peppermint nor Alexis were realistically actual contenders for the crown by that point in the competition, even with the lip sync for the crown format, because the ultimate winner is decided on the actual competition, so the result could have gone either way. That's where the storyline kicks in. Alexis, being the villain of the season, needing to be beaten by the clear miscongeniality of the season. Peppermint, especially on a season that was basically RuPaul's group therapy. And the last two lip syncs we'll be talking about in this video are very similar, as in, they both had poor placing queens that were also the main villains of the season up to that point, defeated by likable queens who were their comrades in the competition. Yes, I'm talking about the Vixen vs Asia and Akira vs Raja from season 10 and season 11 respectively. So that's it. That's the video. Like with every other video from now on, hopefully, we'll close the video with a song, just so I can make myself practice playing guitar more and more and more and arranging songs for it, etc. You said you wouldn't let them change your